Welcome to the Supreme Love Project, where you learn to love supremely so you can live supremely. This is a Power Hour. This is the place where you can get the information you need to heal the terrors in your soul and launch a revolution in your life. Get ready. Take notes. Now, here's your host, Janine Staples.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Supreme Love Project. This is Janine Staples, and we are talking to Amber Hartnell today in our episode of the Cold Crest Teleseminar. And you can go to Amber Hartnell to read more about her work. Amber, are you on the line?
I am. Hello.
Welcome. We are very happy to have you here, and I'm excited to introduce you to the Supreme Love Project and the thousands of women that we have calling in from about 11 different countries. And I want to yield the floor to you just to take a few minutes and tell us who you are, what you do, and how you came to this type of work.
Well, thank you for that invitation, and I'll do my best to just encapsulate it in as concise a way as possible. I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation to share and to open into this community. And I serve as a mystic muse and evolutionary catalyst. And essentially what that looks like is I support people to peel back the surface identities that they've been used to interfacing with the world through and to actually come into direct contact with the core essence of who they are beneath those skins. And this service takes many different forms. I work with people one-on-one, in groups, and many different experiences that I love to create for people to, again, come into the direct revelation of who they really are.
That sounds powerful. That sounds exceptionally powerful, actually. I know that it's difficult to say all that you're saying in one sentence, and I don't mean to interrupt. Is that all you wanted to say? Can I jump in?
Well, there's so many directions we can go, but that's as concise as I can come up with.
Sure. I think about what you just described a lot. There are so many ways as women that we are taught to know ourselves, and very few of those ways are germane to our interior life, the authentic representation of who we are. A lot of the ways that we're taught to know ourselves are through our skin, our clothes, our breasts, our vaginas, maybe through the way we speak, maybe through our fathers, our spouses, our moms, our children. And so a lot of the ways that the identity that women construct gets twisted and turned is because it's convoluted. And what you just described, what I heard you say, is that you offer midwifery. It's like a catalytic coaching experience to help a woman to not only identify the truth of herself on a primal level, on a spiritual level, but also to name it and to own it, to live in it every day. Is that an okay summary?
That's beautifully said. Absolutely. And I mean, we could dive deeper into that if you'd like. This is really the subject matter that we're here to dialogue about today. Shall I continue? Okay,
yeah.
Great. So, to elaborate on what you just said, it's my experience that, we all come into this world whole and intact as essence, the essence of all that we are in a fresh new body. And then we go through a process of accumulating veneers around our wholeness. And the veneers come from familial patterns, cultural conditioning, our educational system, many of the things that you listed. We learn to become externally referenced. So it's like we're echolocating ourselves within our environment to find out who am I, looking through the lens of the outside world, so like the outside looking in. And so it's a gradual process of being domesticated, conditioned out of our most natural state of connection, of relaxation and ease in who we are. And so none of us are immune to this, right? We've all been through the system. There's no way that even those of us that were able to retain a strong sense of connection, even still, we can't go without accumulating these veneers. And so it's a process to peel them back. And yet what we find is when we do begin to start to peel back all that we accumulated, those belief systems that formed how we relate to ourselves and the world, how we filter our experience of the world, through these belief systems. But when we begin to peel them back and we start to come back into contact with who we are before we ever begin to believe these things, what we find is our aliveness, our vibrancy, our wildness, as you said, that primal essence, that is not able to be conditioned. Even though we've experienced other things, it's still at the core whole and intact. It's been unmarred no matter what traumas or distortions we've experienced along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting a visual of what you're describing. I think about this in so many different ways. These veneers, these masks, these layers that we live under. Some of us have a space of agitation, Amber, where we know there's an overlay. We know there's something that's suffocating us, and there are some of us who can't name that. We just feel generally dissatisfied, just generally detached, generally sort of blue. And so that leads me into this idea about essential nature, which is something that you just described. What keeps us from readily accessing our essential nature?
Well, as we've spoken to, it is these, again, the belief systems that tug and pull us out of the natural state of connection to who we are. And so, really the antidote to this is to recondition ourselves. So, we've been entrained into this forward motion, again, really forming who we are and even relating to our value in the world. It's related to what we do and how we show up, right? And so if we can begin to, for instance, if you're feeling that agitation, that feeling of suffocation where there's something that's keeping me from that natural state of joyfulness, of connection to who I am, of ease of being, right? Sometimes we can name it and find the root of it. But in my experience, sometimes we don't actually need to even know what it is specifically and where it came from, but we have to actually learn how to kind of dive beneath the storyline of it, the facade of it, into the pure, raw sensation. Because my experience is that at some point, there was an experience in our life that was painful on some level. And so in that moment, we weren't able to fully feel and process and digest that pain, so we stored some of it in our body. And then there was a storyline created around it of why that is there. And even though we might no longer realize why, that starts to create patterns in our life, that loop. And so we'll continue to recreate conditions in our life that resonate with that initial pain. And so really, one of the most effective ways I've found in myself and my own personal journey and all the ones I've worked with is if we can actually learn how to dive beneath the storyline of why we're feeling pain, when that pain is being triggered by a condition in our life, right? If we can actually stop in that moment and instead of contracting, retracting, numbing out, denying on any level, if we can sit in the discomfort and then begin to drop beneath the story into the pure, raw sensation of that pain and be willing to simply feel it in its entirety, or at least as far as we're able to go in that moment. It might need to go layer by layer, as it often is. But if we're willing to actually fully feel it without denying it, then what ends up happening once we feel it, that initial content, that it gets digested, it gets metabolized, and then the patterns that have formed around it actually begin to collapse because there's nothing to hold them up any longer. And so this is one of the most direct pathways to recover our power. We have power that got trapped in those moments. And so when we actually feel it all the way through, there's an integration that happens with that energy, and it returns back into the core. And we're liberated from that trigger that continue to manifest the conditions in our life to show us, look here, there's something here for you, there's a gift to be unwrapped. Because my experience is that in every challenge and all pain, there's actually a gift for us to retrieve. How does that land?
It's poetic, and it's absolutely, in my view and experience, and according to my research, it's true. there are so many ways. One of the things that I talk about a 5 faceted a phenomena. There's a set of phenomena that are at the base of the soul, and they are is comprised of our belief systems, our survival programs, our defense mechanisms, our narrative structures, and our somatic memory. And what you just described is essentially a touchstone on each of those parts that are at the base of the soul. When we can sit with that energetic force and be with our pain and face it in a way that is non-confrontational, that is an access point from the all-knowing, that I call God. I am a Christian, and so it's the access point from God, the access point from Christ consciousness, where you are in your essential nature, your true divine force, and you can meet the inner workings of your soul, that meaning and that memory that have been created around an experience from 30 years ago or from 3 days ago. If you can sit with that pain and face it with compassion, with respect, with gentleness, with consistency, and not abandon yourself, and not abandon or criticize and condemn yourself, just the way you described, Amber, that pain will dissolve. It will, as you say, metabolize. It will become assuaged so that a space of courage and bravery can grow in greater capacity in yourself as a spirit. That's one of the ways that we do healing. That's called soul clearing. It's called up-leveling. It's called cord cutting. That's cutting the cord from the past. It's dissolving old agreements that uphold belief systems that are toxic. It's readjusting defense mechanisms so that they're not such hairline triggers. It's growing up in a matured adult center that's anchored in a feminine and or masculine God consciousness. That is beautiful.
Thank you. And your articulation there was exquisite and so spot on. Absolutely. And, it's my experience that any thought, lines of energy, I think of thoughts as these lines of energy, like these vectors that are radiating out from the now, from this moment. And this moment is where all of our power lives. So any thoughts that are oriented towards past experiences getting pulled by the triggers of the past, or that are being pulled into projecting into the future, are actually siphoning our power away from this moment, which is the only place our power lives and the only place we can make any true decisions and choices from. So as we begin to train ourselves, because this is a simple process, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy, right? Because those defense structures, sometimes they're very sophisticated, and they are often, as you said, they're hair trigger sensitive to react to these conditions that mirror the past pain, right? So we have to actually train ourselves to be willing to, as you said, meet it with that full presence, the gentleness, the compassion, the steadiness, that I'm willing to be uncomfortable. And even when I feel this itchy irritability or my impulse is to either bolt in presence, where I just become vacant, or physically run in the opposite direction, whatever the mechanism is that the defense structure has to avoid the pain, we have to turn towards it. And sometimes even just to turn towards it isn't as enough. We can start there. We don't have to actively move in and towards it. I mean, eventually we will, but sometimes even just to go from turning away to just turning towards and bringing our full presence and our breath. Now the breath is a key here, because the breath is the carrier wave of the life force, of the vitality of our presence. So breath is literally inspiration, spirit coming into the body. So choosing in this moment to inhabit this form with my essence, with my spirit, with my divinity, my full presence, and to face this pattern that where my attention and my power has been arrested. I'm going to turn towards it and face it and just wrap it in my love. Because, these aspects of us, it's not about getting rid of them, right? It's actually about incorporating, including, integrating. So there's an energetic dynamic I've discovered where if we can face it and energetically swoop up around it and start to draw it in as if this was a younger aspect of yourself, because it is. And so you even imagine, you can start to feel, what time in my life did I feel this? This feeling is familiar. When have I felt this before? And you can start to scan back through your feeling body and remember the times of where this feeling originated from, or all the times it's played out in your life, and you bring your love into those moments and you draw them in closer into the core to support that experience of integration into the wholeness of all that we are.
Oh, powerful. You know, Amber, this is a beautiful conversation. It's wonderful. I'm following you, and I'm also feeling I'm feeling conscious about the thousands of women who are tuning into us. As I said, from 11 different countries, from all over the world. We're all in different spaces of understanding, and so what I'd like to ask you to do is give us a practical example of what that means. I'm thinking of a particular scenario, like a breakup or a betrayal, or like a detailed, specific example where you can describe for us how these feelings show up and what we could actually do to practically implement some of what you're describing.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you for that invitation. Okay, I'm going to share a little bit of a personal story to create some context. So I lost my mother when I was 7 years old in a scuba diving accident. It was very sudden. And it was a very challenging moment, but it was also ended up being a blessing, because the night she died, she came and visited me. And she really let me know that the time coming up was going to be extremely difficult, yet absolutely necessary. And that I would make it through and I would always be loved. And in that moment, she opened me up to my awareness of what you would call God. You know, you can put God, spirit, all that is. And I had the experience of myself as the source of love, and the knowing that we are all that. Fundamentally, that is who we are. And so I had that gift. And it felt very isolating, because there was not anyone else around me that seemed to understand that. And so then I had to go live with my father, who was a stranger to me. And my father was living at a high level of distortion. So he was an alcoholic. He was in the military. He was physically abusive and delusional. So that was quite an environment to suddenly thrust into after losing my mother. And so my father began to whip me with a belt very, very quickly after moving in. And at first I was confused, and I didn't know why this was happening, and it was very painful. And very shortly into the experience, I heard a voice that activated that simply said, "Let go into the bed." And so I went from contracting in resistance to the experience, just trying to protect myself, to opening up and letting go of as much resistance as I could in that moment. And I experienced that the pain lessened. So I basically began to experiment with it. So every time I was getting whipped, I was discovering how much more resistance can I release, how much more spacious can I become. And I realized that I had no control over the conditions. I couldn't stop it from happening, but I had complete command over how I responded to it. So that was the first step for me, is the empowerment of knowing that no matter what the conditions are that you're faced with, that you are always empowered knowing that your response to them is yours to choose. And so there was all kinds of patterns that developed in that time, right? But my father was a very angry, dominating character. So fast forward, growing up in my life, I unraveled, much of the patterns that I created in that time, the strategies that I had to develop just to keep myself safe, right, and communication patterns and all of that. And then I met my husband, and we fell deeply in love and entered into life together. And I recognized immediately that there was something familiar, too, about him. And shortly into the relationship, even with all of the profound love that we were experiencing, there was a lot of triggers that were starting to happen in my system where I recognized that there was much of him that was mirroring the patterns of my father. And so when we take 100% responsibility for everything in our experience and we choose not to become a victim of what's happening, then we're empowered to choose our response to it. So I would sit in the middle of these triggers. So this man who I fell in love with, who became my husband, who is now my husband, we were married for 11 years, he was also a very strong character, a profound genius, but very strong character and very dominating. And so I would notice that I would get triggered in certain instances, and my response would be to want to run, to bolt. And yet I realized that this was my ticket to freedom, that actually all that he was doing was resonating those triggers open in my system so that I could look at them and see them, because I hadn't had the opportunity in my adult life to revisit them from a new perspective. And so I learned in the middle of these moments to sit in the fire and to become the eye at the center of the storm. So when he would perhaps rage at me, I would sit and I would dive beneath the delivery of what was being said, to feel beneath into what's actually being said, what's actually happening here. And then I would follow it into my body to find what part of me is getting triggered. So again, diving beneath the storylines into the pure raw sensation, I could feel it as a clenching in the gut or a sharp sensation in the heart. And I would just simply use it as the arrow showing me where to dive deeper, deeper, deeper. Follow it in, breathe with it. Feel it without running, without ducking out. And then what would happen is it would begin to unravel. So slowly but surely, through this 11-year process, I came to the end of realizing that fear no longer lives here. There's actually nothing that I'm afraid of any longer. There's no situation that I can't be fully present within, whether it's favorable or not. I can be present and I'm fully capable of responding from a more resourced place, a mature and resourced place of integration. Does that help provide some context?
Yes. It's absolutely
Great.
phenomenal. You're reminding me so much of my colleague and my coach, Melanie Tonia Evans. You're reminding me also of my course and my work with women in the Supreme Love Project. The Supreme Love methodology does that exact thing, where it takes a woman through a guided meditation that will enable her in the midst of a trigger to do deep healing at the root, to go into the memory, into the meaning, and underneath it the sensation that's harbored in the body that causes her to stay stuck in a cycle. It's a lack of resolution is what it is. It's a lack of resolve, and it's a lack of, it's a dissociation from self, a disidentification from self. It's a lack of power. And I love what you talked about by noting the childhood triggers showing up in your adult life as an opportunity for you to practice sitting with your pain, and then the fact that you seized that opportunity, and I don't know if it was by necessity or if it was by grace or if it was by accident, whatever it was, the fact that you seized that opportunity is, I'm assuming, life-changing. Was it for you?
Absolutely, completely, in every possible way. So that my experience now is that my life, the entirety of my life, is one congruent expression of my essence, of who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And you know, what I've learned in my experience, I've healed from codependency. Supreme Love has healed me from codependency. Supreme Love has healed me from narcissistic abuse. Supreme Love has healed me from trauma bonds. The Supreme Love that you're describing, that I'm describing in my work, has regenerated my belief systems, has caused me to have new agreements. And the level of transformation and the level of shift and change really is phenomenal. It really is astounding. And like you said earlier, Amber, it's very simple. It's just not easy. It's just so worth it. Was it worth it for you? I guess you've given us a context, but I know it's a nutshell. I know there's more from where that came from. Lots more detail that you could share. I want to encourage women, if they're interested in venturing out into this realm of up-leveling, of healing, about the benefits of doing so, of learning your essential nature, of operating from your adult center, your divine nature.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's worth the effort and the work.
Oh, it's completely worth it. And it's really the whole point, I believe, of why we're even here, right? It's like we are here to continuously up-level, to continue to discover more of who we really are, and to ride that kind of unfurling crest of our own evolution, you know? And sometimes we don't know what we're capable of until we're in the moment and our capacity is being called forth by these experiences, right? And so if we can increase our responsibility, by dismantling our triggers, we increase our ability to respond to life from more fullness, from more ease, from more of this authentic, causeless joy that bubbles up from the depths of our being.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned, Amber, throughout the years of doing my research, of doing my work, of breaking my trauma bonds and up-leveling to the life that I'm living now, this life of abundance and this life of prosperity and clarity and cleanliness in my soul and order in my soul, that I before did not really know what peace was. Before now, I didn't have a deeper understanding of joy, of ecstasy. And I know that I'm still learning. I'm not done yet. There's lots of ways, there are lots of realms that I'm going to, and I'm eager to move forward in my now. What I'm saying, the reason I'm saying that is for the benefit of our listeners, Amber. It's because there are some moments in unconsciousness and in numbness that we experience as women that can cause us to be fooled into thinking that we're okay when we're not. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So because we live in this patriarchal society, it's a racist, misogynistic, sexist, homophobic, transphobic society. There are lots of ways that women who claim womanhood, people who claim womanhood, are taught that happiness is real. So you're happy when you get a partner, or you're happy when you get a baby, or you're happy when you get a promotion maybe. You're happy when you get a new wardrobe or a makeover. You're happy when you have new furniture or a car. You're happy when you have a beautiful home that's landscaped. You're happy when you're in a gated community. That's when you can be happy. That's when you've arrived. That's when you're complete. That's when you're whole. And I bought that bag of goods for years, for a long time. Probably from adolescence into my young adulthood, when life started giving me lots and lots and lots of opportunities to get in touch with my pain. And what I've learned since going through the terrors, the relational and social terrors that I experienced in intimate partner violence, in professional microaggressions, was that getting to a space where I can experience my wholeness on my own in the purest, most fundamental, and radically vibrant way conceivable it's a stronger and more definitive way of being than learning and knowing myself in relation to a whole bunch of stuff and a whole bunch of people. Are you following me?
Oh, absolutely. Because if we're placing our happiness in these highly unstable external conditions, any of what you just mentioned, all of those can change in an instant, and that means that our happiness is disrupted if any of those conditions change, right? And so when we choose instead to turn that back in and to root into the infinite stability of who we are, the unconditional joy that comes from being connected to who we are and our wholeness, again, nobody can take that away from us. So the conditions can come and can go. It's like the surface weather is constantly changing, but if we dive beneath the surface weather into the deeper currents of our essence, then we're steady. Then we know we're resilient. The conditions can change, but we can respond to them from a place of equanimity, from a place of being connected. And that is the whole point. That's really the aim.
Yeah. And so that leads me into the next question that I have, which is, how can we live from this space? How can we live from our essential nature as opposed to those veneers? Because a lot of us are living in relation to our masks. We're living in relation to those veneers that we talked about earlier. So if we are going to do the work, if we are going to up-level, if we're going to deep dive and do deep explorations of the soul, we're going to get in touch with our triggers, we're learning our pain and the scope of it and its sequence, and we do womanhood wondrously. We do it in a bigger way. If we crush that cold in our soul, then how, like practically, and I mean very logistically and practically, how do we live as essential spirits in the earth? How do we do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's so many ways to answer that question, but really, the first thing that comes to mind is, first of all, we have to get to know who we are. So many of us, it's a process to even start to discover, well, who am I? Who am I beneath these skins, right? So to get so self-honest, first of all, with what our masks are, with all of the roles that we've agreed to identify with, and to start to drop beneath them and to start to turn our attention back in. So we find, again, all of those lines of attention that are directed outwards to echolocate ourselves from the external. We begin to loop them back in, to plug back into the core, to our essence, and to first direct our attention into the core and bring our breath and start to feel ourselves inside of our skin. And so often it's even difficult to feel ourselves, right, because there's so much static in the system, so much accumulated tension. So first we need to be able to make space. And there's one very simple exercise that I love to share because it's an instant shift. In 1 minute, you can shift your state. And it's very simple. You just literally stand up and shake vigorously. So you shake your whole body. And what you're doing with this is you're actually shaking up the patterns in the nervous system, right? The habituated patterns, shaking up the accumulated tension. You shake vigorously for 1 minute. Give it everything you've got, every part of your body. And then you stop and you stand still, close your eyes, and feel the cascade of sensation washing through you. And as you do, you can consciously give over to that stream, to that cascading stream. Give your attention over. Allow it, invite it to clear you out of anything that no longer serves. Any of that accumulated tension, give it away and let it wash through you, dripping out of the palms of your hands, out your fingertips, pouring through the soles of your feet, and give it to the earth. And so you're grounding your nervous system into the greater body of the earth, which allows your mind to relax, which creates a greater sense of spaciousness in your body. And then you can fill that space with a fresh new breath where you invite your spirit to descend into your body, to incarnate more fully and really say, I am here. Here I am. Just affirm your presence and feel that surge of your power pouring into your body. So with that, again, 1 minute, you can radically shift your state from where you were to present. So that's the first place to start. So from there, you feel yourself. It's like, here I am. And then from this state of feeling yourself, you begin to inquire and get curious about what most lights me up, what most turns me on, what most excites me and delights me, right? And then turn towards that and choose it, cultivate it. We have to learn to cultivate our pleasure, and I mean pleasure in all regards, and reorienting our relationship to pleasure to being one of that which brings us into greater connection to who we really are, right? Like pleasure is really a guide to bring us into deeper connection with our essence, with our subtle senses, so that we begin to light up our interior. And so to become intimate with pleasure, and so that takes slowing down, becoming more present in this moment, right? So, for instance, if you're smelling a flower, that you really stop and you slow it down and invite that aroma to come in and really receive it consciously. And the same with our gaze. If you're gazing upon something beautiful, slow down and notice the difference in your eyes, the difference between looking out at something or the difference between softening your eyeballs back into the sockets and feeling your eyes as if they're drinking beauty in and inviting that beauty to enter into you, to fill you with that essence. And when you touch something, to slow down and be so aware of the sensation. Like you can even take your own fingers and gently stroke them so lightly on your skin and feel the subtle sensation. So there's so many ways to begin to become more present and to invite more aliveness and more engagement. Again, turning towards what lights us up. And so this is taking 100% responsibility for everything in our experience and for filling ourselves up with that nourishment from within so that our engagement with life is from our overflow. And there's one more simple breath I'd love to share. It's a dynamic walking meditation you can do anytime, any place. to really invite more of this sense of filling up with the nourishment and a softness and a receptivity and feeling the pleasure of being alive. And so you can imagine that you can breathe through every pore of your skin. And so as you're inhaling, you're breathing through every pore and you're inviting life to come into you. And as it's coming in, it's softening you. It's softening, again, those defensive veneers, the habituated patterns. And it's the life force is coming in and you're drinking it in. On the exhale, imagining that you're spreading from the inside out. And as you do, just like a flower, you're exuding the aroma of your essence into the space around you. And then again, you're inhaling, you're inviting life even more deeply with this breath. And then again on the exhale, exuding your essence into the space around you as a blessing. And so if you walk with this meditation where you're really feeling and playing this, it will bring your senses more alive. It will increase your radiance. It will increase your magnetism because you're bringing your attention into the magnetic element as you're drawing in, inviting life force in, inviting goodness in, inviting the blessings in. And the exhale, you're sharing freely, generously the essence of your being. And this will begin to attune you into the resonance of who you really are. Again, it'll soften those defensive veneers. And it'll be interesting for you to notice how life reflects that back to you, because life will rise to meet you in all kinds of ways when you begin to engage at this level. It's quite miraculous, actually, and endlessly delightful.
Wow. Well, those are 3 really helpful meditations. Those are wonderful techniques and methods that we can implement, just as you said, right away. Those are our parting gifts. And so, Supreme Lovers and all the other people who are tuning in from everywhere around this world, please take note, reverse this interview, and listen to the way that Amber described those methods and those meditative actions, and try them today. Amber, thank you so much for this call. Thank you so much for your energy. Thank you also for sharing your story. That's a very special gift in and of itself, and that I appreciate very much. And I want to say to all of our guests that Amber, like our other guests for Cold Crush and any Supreme Love Project, has a special gift for you. Please make sure you go to the opt-in page and her interview page to get that gift, and visit her site as soon as you can, amberhartnell.com, and also the supremeloveproject.com. And Amber, is there anything else you wanted to leave us with? I don't want to cut you off, but I want to make sure that we get some time with you.
No, absolutely. It's my effortless pleasure to share with you today. And again, thank you for the invitation. It's my deep joy to share in this embodied wisdom that's just been a direct revelation that continues to reveal itself as I walk in this life. And it's my joy to co-inspire. And that's why I'm here. So again, thank you.
Wow. Amber, you are a gift. So thank you. And Supreme Lovers, listen, remember what we always say, take this message to heart, build it into your body, and I will see you next time on another episode of Cold Crush and another Supreme Love Project. Bye-bye.
Thank you for participating in the Supreme Love Project. We're a division of Literacy for Life, LLC. Please visit thesupremeloveproject.com for more information about our products and services. Visit JanineStaples.com for more information about our beloved founder and president. And remember, take this message to heart and build it into your body. We'll see you next time, right here. The place to make love, not war, every day of your life.